Whoops. Damn. I start wanting to do this before I get everything all hooked up. Oh man, it's like, oh, what have I got to say that's so important? Nothing. I got nothing to say. It's important. It's just a beautiful day, and I want to say how to do. And just a little play on words, The Bible is just loaded with all these. The Bible is just loaded with all these wonderful little tidbits of information that help us understand that, they weren't lying to us the whole time. That it was just the way our eyes look at things. If we were in slumber, I'm in a spot where I talk with people right now. Someone's calling me a troll. I said, dude, you not only don't know shit about God, you don't know shit about yourself. You don't even know what a troll is, But anyways, my idea of a troll was just someone who would come in and just disrupt things. And, whatever the conversation was about, they were coming from like left field or right field, someplace else other than, particular content of that video or whatever they were talking about. And they also trolls they sit around and they wait for their, this part is like, I'm a fisherman, that's trawling or trolling. Maybe that's where that word comes from. But the idea of, like Jesus coming into, his father's house, and throwing all of these things around, the money changers, all that stuff, made his father's house, a house, a den of thieves and stuff like that. Well, that kind of action actually is just talking about you shutting off your mind. You have tried and this is the cleanup of your mind. It's until this particular time happens to you, you're in this slumber. And the slumber means that you have been granted this time to not be able to see it, and not be able to hear it or understand. And what we're talking about is the seed, the sowing of the seed, the parable. This is how you know if you can understand things, because knowing one thing, but understanding is another. Do you know what it means to sow the seed, And if you answer it as that Jesus is teaching us how to plant something, like outside of the body, how to plant seeds, then you are just, then you're a dead person. You're spiritually dead. You just don't get it, But when they tell you that you're the word, do you understand what that means? They said that word is written inside of you, and that you're the word, and who else is the word? Jesus is the word, They're telling you that you're the word. They're telling us that it's inside of you. God is inside of you. It told us what it is. It says it's male and female. Look for it. Look for it inside. Find this inside of you, and everything will be great for you. Heaven is at hand. You ever heard that? Heaven is at hand. It's at right hand. All of this stories is about the hand. Jesus lifts up his hands. Jesus reaches out and touches them. That hand. It's all about that hand. Remember, God tells Moses, he says, I want you to show these people this, and he says, oh, but they won't believe me. He says, show them this. Put your hand in your chest. And he put his hand in his chest, and he came back out with it, and it was like leprous. Means, it was dead. It was death, And he's like, oh my God. And he says, well, stick it back in. So he sticks it back in. It comes out, and everything's back to normal. He says, so you're in charge. You're in charge of what goes on inside you. You are. So, you show them this. That'll get them, And the other sign that they had told him was, the idea was, take your stick. He says, what's that in your hand? And he says, it's my staff. And he says, toss that on the ground. So he tossed it on the ground and turned into a snake. And he freaked out. He turned his head to it. Well, that's symbolic because you don't necessarily get to see that. It scares you. It says, fear not. Grab it by the tail. And it turns back into a stick. So it's showing him that he has total control over this. That these are the two signs that I want you to use. So, when they say, God is at hand, Jesus is at hand, heaven is at hand, you know. Well, pull yourself together, guys, because when two or three, when people are gathered together on that sixth chakra, it's time to go, baby. It's ready to go. So, you know, it's such a beautiful way now to see the Bible because it talks to you now. It actually isn't something that is, it's hard to read, but you get the gist of it now. You get the whole idea. I've been listening to the Book of Samuel while I've been painting. I'm going to listen to it more to get a good lesson out of it. But you'll get the same story. Someone's being born, and they've been told not to let a razor hit his head, and they're not talking about Samson. All right, it's a whole nother story laid out in the same way. All right. But anyways, I'm going to listen to that story again, see if I can get more out of it. But you will see that there's a repetition in what goes on in these stories, and that's because they have to fit a particular way to go with this code. And the code is the 1 through 9 situation. Whereas if once you learn what each one of the numbers means in the countdown, and it's all through the book. But we are getting all our information from this Bible of what day one mean, what it means for the first hour and the second hour and the third hour and stuff like that. We learn what those things are because each one of those numbers means something. And so you can relate it as the story is being told. And you can, once you've understood what comes first, what's next, this comes next, and then this happens, and then that happens, becomes something that you hear and you listen for it. That's how we were able to hear it in that story the other day about the making of the chief. Yeah, they go out into the middle. Someone raised the flags and asked for silence. There's always silence when you're in the midst. It's always that. It's just beautiful. And it's just funny how, we were given these stories. They were chiseled on walls, handed down through people saying things and remembering things to the T. And even whenever they're missing something like that, you can sit there and you can hear this story. That's why we find it in things. I've developed my ear so I can hear it. So to sow your seed, to sow the seed, is to understand these things that were written in the Bible. So eventually, you're going to have to go past me telling you what that means. You have to understand that we're the tree. This guy says, you just making fun of me, and you just go, you make cutting on him, making cut. I told him, yeah, I'm going to cut you down. Oh, you just want to cut me down. And I thought about it. I said, yeah, I'm going to chop you down to the root. I'm going to chop you all day. Nothing about you, nothing worth saving. Chop you right down to the fucking root. And then, whatever comes after this particular point will be new growth. You got a whole new start, a brand new fresh start. So if you can get your mind to start visualizing symbolism through conversation and stuff like that, it all becomes so much more easier because you have to understand what it means. And even though Jesus goes on and explains what it means, the later parts of those stories, but you still have to understand that was, those people that sowed their seeds by the wayside, which is mean like going to religion and all, that the devil came up to them and took what was in their heart. Remember, because the word is in you. It took what was in there out. The heart is the place that it was coming up, because whenever you are in this, when you're in slumber, your heart is hardened. And your heart is where you get your understanding from. And so all through the Bible, the heart is hardened. God has left a building. Everyone on earth, until you do this works, is God is not there. You've got part of it. You got piece of it. You agreed to this. you believe in this, and you know, later on, like right now, if you've cried and hurt, felt for this energy, like it was real, and you feared it, your own little silliness, now you're on board to change and flip it around and understand that when you sowed your seeds on fertile ground, that's at the end. What they were talking about were four worlds. And the first time when you see the number four, because that's how that parable works out, it's a story about the four. And the first one was the wayside. This is the west. All right, the intellect. It's the black side, black darkness. It's the black horse. This is intellect. This is nighttime that comes over and takes over the land. And then of course the sun comes up the other early morning. They all get up early in the morning, and they begin their rise. And there's that one that comes before the rise, which is, they call it Lucifer, the rising star. And they get it all goofed up with this Venus and stuff like that, and call it Lucifer. And yes, it is, because what happens is, in this part of the story, in this part of the electrics of things like that, is you're being lifted up, and you are this devil. You are the one that has the five senses that are what makes us this devil. All right, the skin, okay, our senses. And so he is being lifted up. And this is on the way up. As you're being changed, you're being moved back into, you're having the hell washed out of you. And of course, it has to come with you. All right. So, but anyways, the first part of that is, if you've sowed your seed, if you got your religion, you got your spirituality by the wayside, then whatever was in you was taken away, and you got nothing but death in you. All of us start off like that. All of us. That's the fallen angels. And so the second part of this, what did they do? They served it on the rocks. This is talking about the north. This is the northern side. This is our emotional side. And it says, even though it came about, it just didn't have any root. So it didn't last very long. So this is that idea of the folly. It just didn't work. It just came about. Third is going to talk about the skin. Third is the flesh. It's representative of the flesh color. All right, it's representative of the five, and this is thorns. This is when you've got it in thorns and thistles, that they choke you out and you can't get it. This is the skin. The skin's always weak in these stories. So when things were made into the thickle through the thorns, this is man. This is the outside encroaching in on your spirituality, and it then whacks it out, and it cannot grow. And then again, over here to the far west, or the east. The east is where we were traveling in this story. This is the fertile ground. You sow your seeds here, and you only get to this fertile ground by going inside. And the well is inside of you. This well that you dig from is deep inside of an earth. So this is a physical representation of clean water well. Is that you have to dig down into earth to find it, deep into earth. And this is where the Ibis comes in. In the old times, because they have to seek down deep. That's where they get their nourishment from. And they want you to do this too. This idea of casting your nets and all this bread and stuff like this. They're talking about food. They're talking about, soul food. This is what they're looking for. So, it's Jesus came up to a vine. He was hungry and it didn't have no fruit. So he slapped it, And so this idea, that's how we're changing, and that's what that four is. So if you understand this story, I want you to go over this again, so you understand that the four is a traveling situation, where when we find things that have the number four or relate to number four, they're talking about this traveling. And in the Bible, almost all of these guys are traveling, and they're getting to the fertile ground, and God's not there. So their intellect is still running. Their God side of them, the spiritual side of them, it's dark. It's black, meaning the intellect has them. And so that's how the part of the worlds are read. And that's how you are to understand the story of the parable of sowing the seed. Because along with that, if you were to find the inside of this Bible, you would see that they were talking about our kundalini, that they were talking about the chakra system. And then if you learn to bring that side of you alive, that your inner workings to life, well, then you're cooking with God. All right. So this is what it means to sow the seed properly. To get it to go over to the east, to change your mind. And this is how the people of Nineveh, they went from being sorrowful and awful, and enemies of the Lord, to, something greater overnight, basically, by just changing their mind. And this is how we get the idea that God does not kill things. Only people kill things. This is a different side of this God, but it's the fleshy side does all the killing, because the spiritual side does all the healing and the loving and the caring. And we have made this decision to be separated. Man, I tell you, we have made this decision to be separated for whatever reason that is. We are the grease and these cogs, the wheels of the world. And everything is centered around this part right here. Everything. So earth and heaven and everything is all about this part right here. And all of us are making this. It seems like in the science of things, it only takes a little bit of you and me, which are going to be the true light bearers, because we have brought the devil in us up, cleaned us up, and brought us back down again. As just better human beings. But the same thing is that I can still cuss. I can still say my words. I'm still me. There are parts of me that would like to change, and so they would just change if they were terrible. But this is showing you that that's not how you worship God. Worshiping is not one of those genuflecting things. There's nothing that you have to go around, wearing white robes and acting a fool. You just just be yourself. Be yourself is the greatest thing that you can give to this world. And it's the best thing, that was the thing that was taken from you before. And, and I don't know what great things we get, but, it says it's great. I'm having a great time. I love my life. I've always loved my life. And if you found yourself coming to this channel, then, then you are seeking the same thing, But if you don't give a hoot about this other side, it's not going to be coming to you. If you just fun around with it, it ain't going to come to you. You have to really want to come to get over to this other side. Honest, because you just don't. They said everyone in their own time, but I'm thinking that, we're making it easy for everyone. Oh, yeah, well, all I got to do is believe in Jesus, that he lived and died, and that makes me saved. Hell no, it don't. But to know how to get it there, how to know this information is not the same thing as understanding it, because, you may have to work on a whole lot of things before you do that. And that's what that Dolores, she says, turn off your TVs. That might be the first thing. Stop bringing in hate into your life, to those that knock enough, they get answered. That's that being that persistent neighbor where you're constantly knocking on the door. And those that seek will find it. So, I'm not going to draw any lines for you, but, let's just not be so silly. This idea, the false prophet, is this being a false witness. I got it, I made it. Well, If you made it, then, you know, there are a few things that you should be able to do, and that is to understand a parable or two. Like, you know, one of my favorites that I asked, what is it? Can you match this? You know, if God told you, Jesus tells you that you have to come as a child to him, how would you go about that? You know, you say you spoke with God, you spoke with Jesus. How'd you go about that? What was the first thing that you had to do in order to communicate with this guy? You know, and so, you know, if someone says they tell you they talked to God, you can't believe them. You know, that they remembered something while they were up there, they can't believe them. You know, and not that it matters that we have to believe them or not, but there are things that you can ask to find out if someone went on the other side and says, "Did you do your works?" Yeah, I do my works all the time. I try it all the time. You know, have you killed yourself in Christ today? Have you tried that? Do you know what that means to die in Christ? You know, these are fun little things, you know, stuff like that. Do you know who mother and father are when they talk about in the Bible? Who is mother and father? That could be the easiest thing at all to ask someone. You know, you don't have to pull down their pants and find out if they've been circumcised or not. But even an act of circumcision, he says, that doesn't do anything to you. But a believer, someone who follows the way, doesn't have to be circumcised. It says that in the Bible. It says you could still follow the law and not be circumcised. What does that mean? You know, and there's so much involved with, you know, hanging out with people that are uncircumcised, you know. But it means just cutting off the lower, you know, this whole idea of going inside and taking the devil with you and cleaning that motherfucker. They toss him into the water. In these stories, they toss him into the water. That cleans him up. It doesn't get rid of him. It cleans him up. All right. I love you guys. I'll chat with you later. All right. Just a little fun talk and symbolism. All right. Best to you.